Hi everyone, this is Russ from SparxHockey.com. Welcome to another episode of The Edge. Today we're going to tell you about the Fire Profile, which is our flat bottom sharpening profile. We'll talk about the origin of the profile, we'll talk a little bit about the research that we did to arrive at our profile, and then we'll explain how it actually feels to skate on it. So, flat bottom profiles, one of the earliest references is from a gentleman named Redmond. In 1983 was awarded a patent for a profile where you would take a standard radius of hollow shape that we're all accustomed to. This is, say, for example, a 1/2 inch radius of hollow, and you would, instead of going up and over the full arc, you would truncate that arc so there was a flat in the center of the profile. And you can kind of see what that does is, in the original profile, the red ice surface, the blade sinks much lower into the ice than it does with the green profile with the flat bottom. And what that means is you have a lot less skate blade sinking below the surface of the ice, slowing you down. But you have a very, very similar edge, an angle of attack on that edge to give you the bite of a potentially much sharper profile for the amount of glide that you're getting. So you're getting, another way to say it is, for the same bite in turns and stopping, you're getting a much faster, less drag profile on the straightaway. So again, this was the first reference, one of the first references back in 1983. Then what we did was we looked at the profiles that were out on the market today, or a couple years ago. Those were the flat bottom V from Blackstone and the BFD, which is another flat bottom profile from Blademaster. The Blademaster profile was very similar to the Redmond profile described back in 1983. We looked at these profiles and we began considering, what would we do with our profile? We looked on chat sites and forums for hockey because none of us had historically or previously skated on the flat bottom profile ourselves, and so we wanted to learn a little bit about it. And we were, I guess, a little bit shocked at the responses out on these forums, where some people were very, very dead set on the flat bottom profile. This was a profile that they had switched to, and they would, quote unquote, never go back. Whereas other people had tried the flat bottom profile and were completely turned off and would never try it again. A very kind of polarized response for something that theoretically, we understood and we thought, wow, this is a great idea. This is giving you equivalent bite, but much faster on the glide. And then we started doing our research before we went and incorporated this into our product line. And what we found was, for a perfectly straight blade, some of the profiles, these are dimensions that are taken from some of the existing profiles that were on the market before we came along. What we noticed was the flat portion of some of these profiles was 100 wide, so 0.100 inches, but the average skate blade was 0.110 inches. And so we thought to ourselves, wow, this is amazing that what they call the fang, or the little part on the sides of the flat, was much, much narrower than we had thought it was. And if you think about it, this math right here tells us that each fang is 5/1000ths of an inch, which is less than the thickness of 2 sheets of paper. So the paper on its edge, the thickness of that piece of paper, the fang is actually less wide than 2 sheets of paper. And that was surprising to us because we had, in our research for our skate sharpener, noticed how much variation there was in the straightness of a hockey blade. A hockey blade isn't always straight. There's bends in the blade due to the blade itself, and actually mostly from the blade holder, the white part, the toque, or in CCM's case, this holder here. These holders, once they're riveted down to the body of the skate, the holders are warped very often. And we said, well, how much are they warped? And we tested about 50 blades in and out of the holder. And what we found was, even though the blade is clamped in the center by the skate sharpener, this is a cartoon to illustrate that most blades were bent anywhere from 0.002 to 0.005 of an inch. And that showed us that, before we talked about this 0.005 of an inch wide fang, well, if the blade is warped by 5/1000ths of an inch, you won't even have one of these two fangs. Whichever way the blade is curving, you're going to either have a very, very small fang or no fang at all. And this was sort of an aha moment for us where we said, maybe this is the origin of why some people try flat bottom and they hate it, and other people try it and they love it. It could be that their skate steel is actually, or the boot, the holder, is warped enough that they're getting a very, very inconsistent experience on their flat bottom. And so the next step for us was to design our own flat bottom profile, because clearly there were hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of people skating on this, and we didn't want to not offer it. But what would we do differently to improve this situation so that you're always guaranteed a good edge? And what we did was, which was pretty obvious to us, is we narrowed, instead of going to a 100 or a 90, a 0.09, we shrunk the width of that flat. Not a lot, just a little bit, so that in the end we chose an 85/1000ths of an inch flat width, which left us with 25/1000ths for our two fangs, or 12.5/1000ths on each side, so that even if we had as much as a 7/1000ths variation in the blade straightness, we're still left with a substantial fang on each side, so that the skater always feels like they have an edge. The worst thing that we could ever give somebody is no edge on either their inside or their outside of their skate. So by narrowing that flat on our fire ring, we now ensure a more consistent fang on either side, regardless of if there's a bend in the blade. And we know we'd never, what's interesting is in the 50 blades that we tested, not one was perfectly straight. It's impossible. They all have some bend in them. And the bend is typically 2 to 5/1000ths. So that's the origin. This is some of the research that we did. And again, we wound up with a narrower flat in our flat bottom profile, which we call fire. And we find with the hundreds and hundreds of people that have tried the flat bottom profile from us, that there's been no complaints. People love it. One of the things we do here, and we think this is important to share with you, is that most people, if they're going from, say, a 1/2 inch radius of hollow, if you want equivalent bite when you're standing straight up, you have to go with a tighter flat bottom profile, so like a 3/8. If you want to feel 1/2 inch on the flat, but 1/2 inch in the corners, you have to go with a 3/8 fire. Or another way of saying it is, if you go from a 1/2 inch radius of hollow to a 1/2 inch fire, when you stand straight up on your skates, it's going to feel like you're on a 1 inch radius of hollow. It's going to feel very, very loose. When you go to take a corner or go to stop, you're going to feel that 1/2 inch profile. But when you're standing straight up, it's gonna play with you. It's gonna mess with your mind, because you're gonna be very, very loose on your skates. And some people like that. So we recommend experimenting, try different profiles. Let us know what you think. Please send us additional questions to any of our social media profiles at sparxhockey.com, and we'll talk to you next week.